So we've been using the wood stove inside, but now we're going to be getting so much sap we're really going to need to set up outside, because the amount of humidity we're going to add to the house would just get a little bit too crazy. I've shown you guys how to reduce the amount of sap that you've got by freezing, and today I'll show you how we are set up outside to do our boiling. So what I like to use is a rocket stove. So here's our rocket stove. It's nothing fancy. We've just used red brick, didn't use any amount of fire brick at all. That's something I'd like to upgrade here in the future, but for now I don't have time to really mess with the design all that much. But I am going to go ahead and rebuild it and restack it, replace some of these busted bricks, and get this set up for use. We actually love using this thing throughout the year for grilling. You can see I've got this tray over here that comes over, and I've also got this grate from my old charcoal grill that I can normally just lay there below in order to grill. And we often even will use one of these for cast iron, and the other one might have burgers on it, and we can get kind of this dual setup going. But for what we're doing today, I don't even use the grates, but this is set up so that I can actually place on here our canner. It's one that you can use outside, and it definitely builds up soot on the bottom of the canner. Be mindful of that when you pick it up to move it or anything after you've been using it. If you touch it to your pants or something, you're gonna get quite a bit of soot on you. So I'm gonna go ahead and tear this down and build it back up with some fixed up bricks and just get this overall really cleaned up so we can get to boiling hopefully by later this afternoon. So this grate here was from the bottom of the charcoal grill that usually you put your charcoal on top of. That's how hot it gets in this rocket stove, is it actually just disintegrated the entire middle of that grate, and this is all that's left is what was between the bricks. So I'm not even planning on doing that again. There's really no need to have a grate in the bottom. The main reason you end up with bricks that are shattered like this and broken is the temperature differential. Since I'm not using fire brick, I just have to make sure I start small with my fire and make sure that the speed at which it heats up is a lot slower. You're gonna get some amount of brick splitting probably anyway, but that at least will help it to last a lot longer. It's also important to have a good layer of ashes at the bottom. I'm gonna take these ashes out, but I'm gonna bring some more that we've got from the wood stove. That'll be the base and keep the bottom from having that problem, and put it along the edges on the sides as well. If you're used to using a wood stove, then you always want to leave those ashes in the bottom of the stove. Same kind of thing here. You want to make sure that you have ashes in there to help, and it kind of helps insulate what's there. I don't know if adding the ashes in here is going to do us any good, but it's not going to hurt at least if I fill in these holes with that. It might help prevent these bricks cracking. I don't plan to mortar it or anything, especially since I at some point want to put fire bricks and make it a little bit larger, that sort of thing. Then I can get in there and adjust things and not have to break anything apart to do that. So we'll just see what this does and learn from it, whether it works well or not. Alright, so why a rocket stove? Why am I doing this instead of just an open fire? Well, really the main reason is efficiency. I will feed the fuel in to the front here, feed in sticks and logs, whatever I've got that I want to use, and I'll be able to feed it in there, not have to cut it up into little pieces. As long as it fits in the front, we're good. And then the air will also pull in that way, and then all that heat then is going to be directed up the back. So we'll be able to set our canner on the back and have that going and pulling in the most amount of heat it can. So what about our fuel? What do we use in order to fill this thing up? So if you've watched some of my other videos, you know that we definitely heat with firewood. So what I've actually done out here is I have marked on the side here different increments as to what length that these pieces of wood are. So 12 inches, 16 inch, and 19 inch max, which for us, that is the biggest I am comfortable putting in our wood stove downstairs. And then I marked it for 24 inches as well, because storing logs on 4-foot pallets, I don't want any piece of wood further in length than that. If it's that high, I can cut it in half and get it back under here where it would be a more comfortable stored thing. So I don't like to cut logs twice. So anything that I lay down on here that I'm not sure is around closer to a 16 or 17 inch, I lay it down here, and if it's past 19 but under 24, it goes here. So I don't have a roof over top of this at all. And this is just all the wood that I really don't want to recut, even though I could, to fit it in downstairs. And I just leave it here and I wait for maple syrup season. You can also see I've got huge limbs here. Our sycamore trees really like to drop huge limbs. So I carry those limbs over here whenever I see those after big storms. And then those limbs get stored here and they wait for syrup season. And those are ones I just feed in. So after we've gotten large amounts of wind, you know, I'll have stuff like this ash limb here that's come down. Or if I decide to go ahead and take down, you know, some of these large dead ash trees, that one and that one, another one right here. If I decide to go ahead and take those down, what am I going to do with all those limbs? I really don't want to spend the time putting that through my chipper. It only handles up to 3" anyway. Might as well stack it over here or bring it straight over here and put it into that rocket stove. But even with all those logs that were too long for the wood stove and all the limbs that I find falling around the property from just the main trees, the question still remains, how do I get enough firewood to do that without getting into the good stock of my wood stove lumber? Well, that's where my trailer and my tractor here come in handy. So I actually take it and I go out to the woods and I look around for fallen limbs. Plenty of them fall throughout the year, or when I'm taking down trees out there, there's plenty of limbs available, especially from a lot of these ash trees that have died and fallen out here. And I'll just go out and collect those. Usually that'll get me at least a day or two's worth of wood. And as long as these limbs have either bark on them or they have been propped up a little bit off the ground and haven't soaked in too much moisture, they actually burn quite well, especially for having not been cut and stacked. And I found it's especially dry enough for our purposes here of cooking outside. I wouldn't necessarily put this in the wood stove, but definitely good enough to make syrup. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful and hope you guys are having a lot of fun doing your sap boiling this year, and we'll catch up with you on the next one.